What's good, y'all? My name is Zach Young, and welcome back to Young Money Sports. And today, we have another episode of Was He Any Good? Now, I've seen this one get requested multiple times in my comment sections by one guy, so shout out to GeoDude24 for the recommendation. But enough talk, let's get right into it. Jason Kidd, one of the best point guards in the history of the NBA, a terrific playmaker, shooter, and defender. Kidd was always a threat to get a triple-double anytime he stepped on the floor, and he also ended up being a rare case of a great player also being a good head coach. The 1994 second overall pick would hit the ground running, winning the 1995 NBA Rookie of the Year award and being named an All-Star starter in 1996. But the good times wouldn't last in Dallas. After continually feuding with fellow Jay, Jim Jackson, and head coach Jim Clemens, Kidd was shipped to Phoenix in exchange for 5 players, the most notable of whom were Sam Cassell, AC Green, and young Michael Finley. Kidd's time in Phoenix was a mixed bag. It was good for him, with him getting 3 All-Star nods and 3 All-NBA first-team selections, but the team did not perform as well as many believed they should. They were fun to watch for sure, but they only made it out of the first round one time in Kidd's 5-year tenure. This would also be one of the many times that Kidd was surrounded by controversy. In January of 2001, Jason Kidd was arrested for hitting his wife multiple times, stemming from an argument about feeding their son. He was later found guilty on the charge of domestic abuse and was ordered to pay a $200 fine and take anger management classes. Kidd would once again be traded after the 2001 season, this time being sent to the New Jersey Nets in exchange for Stephon Marbury. This was an opportunity for Kidd to improve his image and bring a struggling team back to relevance. Fortunately for Kidd and the Nets, this trade would bear fruit almost immediately. New Jersey would make the NBA Finals in 2002 and 2003. 2 chances to bring the city of East Rutherford their first championship both ended in disappointing fashion. The Nets were swept by the Kobe Shaq Lakers in 2002 and were smothered by Tim Duncan and the Spurs in 2003. It showed that while the Nets were good and had the talent to make the finals, they were still a level below whoever was coming out of the West. That would be as good as it got for Kidd during his tenure in New Jersey. Interestingly enough, he almost signed with the Spurs after the 2003 finals, but later went back on his verbal commitment, re-signing with the Nets. Now that could have been something. The Spurs of the mid-2000s were already insanely good, but imagine adding Jason Kidd to that. They would have won 2 championships minimum, at least in my opinion. After 2003, the Nets could never get back to their true championship form. Teams around the East continued to get better, and the Nets were left behind. Kidd once again made headlines in January of 2004, when it was alleged that he helped get Nets coach Byron Scott fired after a disappointing start to the season. By 2007, I think the writing was on the wall for both Kidd and the Nets. The team still hadn't even made it back to the conference finals since 2003, and Kidd was starting to lose a step. Over halfway through another disappointing season, Kidd requested a trade. This made sense, as he was almost 35 years old and was still ringless. After talks stalled with the Lakers, Kidd was eventually dealt to the Mavericks for 5 players, $3 million, and 2 first-round picks. This second stint in Dallas would prove to be his most successful one in terms of team success. Dallas made the playoffs every year he was there, and this all peaked in 2011, when Kidd and the Mavericks defeated the Miami Heat to win their first NBA championship. At the ripe old age of 38, Kidd played a great supporting role to Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavericks during this championship run. He was still dishing the ball well and hit some big threes during the finals. Unfortunately for Dallas, this team would turn out to be a one-year wonder, as they were swept by Oklahoma City in the first round the very next year. So, for the first time in almost a decade, the 39-year-old Kidd was a free agent. It was expected that he would sign back with Dallas, since they had verbally agreed to a 3-year contract, but Kidd would soon change his mind, instead deciding to join the New York Knicks, who were offering him the same deal as the Mavericks. When asked why he decided to go back on his commitment, Kidd stated that he felt like New York had more pieces that he could work with, which made sense. The Knicks looked like they were entering another era of playoff contention after laying low for most of the 2000s. While the Mavericks championship window had almost immediately slammed shut following their magical run in 2011. It was believed that Kidd would have more of a reserve role, coming off the bench and mentoring fan favorite Jeremy Lin, but Lin would end up leaving to join the Rockets after the Knicks decided not to match their contract offer, meaning that Kidd would likely be the starting point guard. But just days after the contract was signed, Kidd would once again make headlines for all the wrong reasons. On July 15, 2012, Jason Kidd was charged with a misdemeanor for driving while intoxicated. He had been out partying earlier in the night and was said to be acting drunk hours before the accident. He was out driving by himself and crashed into a light pole. Thankfully, he only suffered minor injuries, but he still couldn't have looked like more of a dumbass if he tried. He pled guilty to driving while intoxicated, but he wouldn't be punished by the NBA until the next year when he was coaching the Brooklyn Nets. This Knicks team was strange to say the least. their offseason consisted of bringing in just a bunch of old guys. Besides signing the 39-year-old Kidd, they traded for 38-year-old Marcus Camby and 40-year-old Kurt Thomas. They signed Pablo Prigioni, who is a 35-year-old rookie. They signed 35-year-old Kenyon Martin halfway through the year, and they even brought 38-year-old Rasheed Wallace out of retirement. To this day, they are still the oldest team in NBA history, with an average age of 32 years and 240 days. And yet, the Knicks were still really good in 2013, especially at the beginning of the year. And Jason Kidd played a good supporting role for the team, although he technically wasn't the team's starting point guard. See, when the Knicks traded for Kurt Thomas, they also got Raymond Felton. Knicks coach Mike Woodson made it known that Felton would be the team's starter on opening night. Kidd would get a chance to start though, as young guard Iman Shumpert was still recovering from a torn ACL. So, New York would essentially run a two-point guard lineup, and like I said, Kidd wasn't playing bad in this role. He was still a solid all-around player, getting a couple of rebounds and steals, making some nice passes, and hitting a few threes. He wouldn't have to worry about scoring as much because the team had guys like Felton, J.R. Smith, and of course Carmelo Anthony. He could do what he was best at, which was giving those guys the opportunity to put the ball in the basket. His scoring wasn't bad either. In his prime, he was known for driving to the rim and finishing, but of course it's harder to do that when you get older. So, as he advanced in years, he started to focus more on shooting threes. By the time he got to New York, his offensive production came almost exclusively from the three-point line. In 2012, over 80% of his shots came from beyond the arc, and he was still hitting them at a 35% clip. He would continue to do that in New York, and he was still effective from range. In the season opener against the defending champion Heat, Kidd hit 3 three-pointers in a 20-point win. November would be a good month for both Kidd and the Knicks. The team went 11-4, and Kidd averaged around 8 points while shooting nearly 50% from deep. December would end up being Kidd's best month in New York. He continued his hot shooting and had multiple games where he put up over 15 points, including scoring a season-high 23 points while also grabbing 6 rebounds and dishing 8 assists in a 2-point win over Phoenix. And the team was continuing to win games, keeping up with the top teams in the Eastern Conference. As long as he kept this up, both he and the team would be in good shape to make a deep run once the playoffs came along. Unfortunately for Kidd, he would basically go ice cold for the next couple of months. He went from shooting almost 42% from deep in December to only shooting around 33% in January. He wasn't at the point where you could call him a liability on the floor, but the drop-off was pretty noticeable when most of his scoring efforts came from beyond the arc. February would only get worse for Kidd. His three-point percentage was cut in half, dropping to nearly 16%, and his field goal percentage sat at a mere 19%. Something would need to change to get Kidd back on track, and that change would come at the beginning of March. Jason Kidd would start to come off the bench, and I think this was a welcome change for both him and the Knicks. This allowed him to actually play point guard and provide a spark off the bench. This would also aid him defensively, as the team noted that he'd struggled to guard the other team's starting shooting guards, and it's safe to say that his production picked up coming off the bench. The most notable game from this stretch came in a loss to the Clippers. See, entering this game, Kidd was going through another bad shooting slump. Fortunately for him, his old shooting coach from New Jersey, Bob Tate, was working for the Clippers. He worked with them before the game, and Kidd would knock down 3 shots in a row from beyond the arc. Kidd finished the season averaging around 6 points with 4 rebounds and 3 assists in 76 games played. The Knicks also won 54 games, giving them the second best record in the Eastern Conference. They would face off against the remains of the Big Three Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. Kidd was fine in the first 2 games, but after that, he wouldn't score a point for the rest of the playoffs. The Knicks would defeat Boston in 6 games, but would lose in the second round to the Pacers. Kidd would almost have no impact on the series, as his minutes would get cut in half, and Mike Woodson chose to give those minutes to Felton and Pablo Prigioni. Despite still having 2 years left on his contract, Jason Kidd retired in June of 2013, ending his Hall of Fame career after 19 years. He wouldn't be away from basketball for long, as just days after he announced his retirement, he would be named the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. And although it would take about 9 years and 3 teams, Kidd has established himself as one of the better defensive coaches in the league today. So now, to answer the question, Jason Kidd on the Knicks, was he any good? When I was beginning to write the script for this video, I figured that I already knew the answer to this question. But as I researched and saw how important he was to this team, it made me change my mind. His impact on this team went much farther than what the stat sheet implied. His intelligence and leadership definitely rubbed off on his teammates, resulting in the most success the franchise had seen in over a decade. And considering how both the play of the Knicks and their guards regressed the following year, it wouldn't surprise me if the departure of Kidd had something to do with that. So, the answer is yes. But what did you guys think of Jason Kidd in New York? Who else would you like to see on Was He Any Good? Let me know in the comments. I'm thinking about switching it up here soon and discussing some football players next. so let me know what y'all think of that. But that's going to do it for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.
It's on the shot clock. Kid for three. Fouled.